whilst I look forward to meeting every guest on all of our channels, I'm especially looking forward to today's guests because I'm a great believer in the power of the mind, and I genuinely aim to challenge mine every day in many ways. For example, doing these shows 3 or 4 times a day, that's a challenge. But today's guest is promising me a lucrative return for that mind power. He's the best-selling author of How to Track Money Using Mind Power. Exactly what every achiever leader needs. My guest is also known as the Attract Money Guru. He's the author of 11 books. He's appeared in the docudrama Think and Grow Rich, The Legacy. He is James Goi Jr. Welcome, James.
Hello, Malcolm, and thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's more than a pleasure from my end, James, I'm going to tell you. James, I have to start after our chat with this question. You claim to be the only metaphysics teacher and writer who specializes in the mind-power-money connection. Now, that's intriguing, but please explain to me it in layman's language.
Certainly, the mind-power-money connection. People should understand that everything is mind power. Everything we do as human beings, we're exerting mind power. In other words, we are having thoughts, feelings, and images, and then we're speaking words. So these 4 things are how we are projecting or expressing our mind power. And it follows then that if we are creating our experiences, which we are, the mystics and the spiritual teachers and the quantum physicists will all tell you that we are creating and causing to come into form that which we're thinking about and that which our mind power is producing. Knowing that, then we also understand that our finances are a result, predominantly, the foundation of our financial situation, our business success or lack thereof is mental. It is our mind power. And so that's why my first book, and that's why I specialize really, and I'm the only teacher that I know of that specializes exclusively in the mind power money connection, because I think it's so important for people to really, really get to understand that.
Brilliant. Now, I said in my opening piece, I'm totally in tune with you on mind power, and I've got my own mantras such as no problems, only opportunities that help me think laterally, especially in uncertain times like now. But can people truly power up their brain, even if it's been, shall we say, idle for many years? Or do we get to an age limitation?
Right. The only limitations I would say would be actual physical limitations, and even those can be overcome. But if people have a diagnosable mental or cognitive type of a disease or something, obviously that is a challenge to overcome. But directly, if we move that aside and say that we're conscious and we are mentally healthy and well balanced, it's never too late. The only barrier is for people to learn that mind power exists, that there are certain techniques that can be learned. They're easy to apply. They're easy to understand. I mean, there's nothing hard about this, but most people just don't know about it. So at any age, once we become aware that this is possible and we learn about these techniques, then we can start to apply them, and we can have, just wonderful results in business, in sports. I mean, there's very, bodybuilders at very advanced ages, runners that didn't get into it until, they were in the very late stages. And so our bodies, our minds, and our finances and the results of our lives can all be transformed when we transform our minds and the way we use them. And there's no age limit on that. As long as we can still think, then there's hope.
Excellent, yes. And obviously, if the more you're thinking as well, you're extending your life, you're stretching your body. Yeah,
certainly. I mean, we are creating new. They used to think in the old days, science used to think that our brains, after a certain age, did not create any more new brain cells. They actually know that is not true now. Neurogenesis, we actually create new brain cells. We can do this at any age. And so at any age, by using our minds in any way, we create new neural pathways. It's just like when you use your body in different ways, the muscles will develop for that sport or whatever it is. And so it's just on the person to decide what it is they want to do, how they want to develop. Do you want to learn music now? Well, it doesn't matter that you're 80 years old, because you can learn a new thing. And everything you do, even, which is interesting, there's a thing called grounding or earthing, where people walk on the bare ground for health benefits, the electrical connection to the earth and all of this. Even something as simple as that, you are actually building new pathways, new neuron connections in your mind by simply taking your shoes off and taking a walk in the dirt or in the grass. So everything we do is helping us to grow and develop. And we just need to do the things that help us grow and develop in the right ways, the ways that we choose we want to go.
I totally with you. It's very exciting. You're kindly guesting here on the Achiever Leader Show. It's not called the Average Leader Show. Where do you think what you teach and write helps the average become the achiever?
Right. Well, average people, most people think like most people. So average people think like average people. And that's the trap. Now, we need people, but there's no right or wrong. From a spiritual perspective, I won't say that everybody should be a great leader or everybody should be a multimillionaire or any of that, because then who would deliver your pizza, right? I mean, every level of life is important. And so I tell people, you don't need to be great. You don't need to excel or be at the top of your game. If you're not interested in that, you have a position where you're comfortable, you're serving a purpose, and that's fine. But if we want to rise above that, then we need to start thinking above that. We need to stop taking in just the stimulus that the masses are taking in and being molded by that, and seek out higher platforms of information and interpersonal association with like energies and consciousness of what we want to bring ourselves up to be. So if we want to be really excel and be an advanced achiever in material business, a success or whatever, then that's where we need to put our energy and our focus and move toward. But we need to realize that anytime we move towards something, we're moving away from something else. So there's no payoff without a price. And so when we move in this direction, we might be extracting ourselves from, whether it's relationships with people we care about, where we can't give them as much time and energy anymore. So there's always a price to pay. If we want more and we're willing to pay the price that requires, then everything is possible. And we can rise far above the average level of consciousness and accomplishment.
Wow, yeah. I'm not asking you to give everything away about your book, but give us a tease into how a leader should go about attracting money through mind power. Is it plausible, realistic? Can it be done fast?
Very plausible, very realistic, and fast. That's a relative term, but I would say yes. But I'll give you a couple of examples. One time, decades ago, my life partner and I, Kathy, we were $10,000 in credit card debt, making very little money, and we had been using the cards to fill in. And so here we find ourselves at $10,000 in credit card debt. Back then, that might have just as well have been $1 million or $10 million. But so $10,000 in credit card debt. And I already been studying about mind power and things like this. And I thought, well, I know this stuff works. I've used it before. I need to use it now, because this is not sustainable. And so I thought, if all of the mind power techniques, if mind power works, then any of the techniques work. And then I can pick just one technique. And I picked affirmation. And I came up with this affirmation: all of our credit cards are completely paid off. And I started doing that every day, morning, night, while I was driving my bicycle to my low-paying job across town. And within a 4 to 6 week period, someone actually gave us a gift of $10,000, not a loan, gift. Someone who had just come into a lot of money, and they heard about our plight, And they said, well, that's nothing. And they just wrote a check on the spot for $10,000. And then over the next, 2-3 weeks, whatever, as the bills came in from those cards, I paid each one off in full. So $10,000 in a 4 to 6 week period, I would call that quick. And then another time we were $50,000 in debt, and I attracted 2 6-figure windfalls into the house within a 3-month period. Now, is 3 months a short amount of time? Yes, I think so. When I attracted two amounts of money that I had basically never seen before, there was more money than I could have made at those wages for decades. And it only took 3 months, for the two of those to come in. And so if people think that those manifestations happen what they would call quickly, then definitely it can happen fast. Sometimes in divine order, things will take longer. We always want to have patience and not rush things or force things in a way that they shouldn't be. But things can actually happen very, very quickly when you really focus your mind power and don't, leave any option for failure.
Yeah, it's almost like that saying that people have, you'll get what you wish for, if you start to think negatively, isn't it?
Right.
Now, you've got a new book out called The New Normal, which you
Right.
say is a spiritual, metaphysical, and common sense take on the 2020 coronavirus emergency and its after effects.
Right.
The new normal is what leaders are struggling with, as it's been such a dramatic change with many deep impacts and many more to come. So what are the key messages in your book that will appeal to our achiever leaders or those wanting to have your help?
Right. One of the main messages is that people need to take the responsibility, whether it's in business, in your industry, or personally, and just as a human being trying to survive. You need to get your information from a wide array of sources, because too many people, both in business and in life, are watching and trusting and believing in and putting a lot of stock in what the mainstream media is telling you. So you're missing a lot of the story, and therefore, at best, you're underinformed, and at worst, you're highly misinformed. And when we don't have the proper information, then we can't look ahead, because another lesson of the book is that we need to look ahead in life and in business and anticipate what is likely to come about. But if we haven't done that wide research and really understand to a higher degree than the average person what is coming down the road long enough before it gets here to do something about it, then that is going to be a problem. So we have to get our information, we have to anticipate, and then another big lesson is preparation. We're waiting for things to be another way, the way they used to be. They're not going to be that way. We have widened our information intake, and now we can anticipate other things that most people aren't anticipating. Now comes another important ingredient, and that's preparation. Now that we see that these other things, even though they're unpleasant, we don't want them to happen, there's a high enough probability that they might come about that we should be preparing for them. Then we need to engage in that preparation.
That's very good thinking, very sensible thinking too. You've authored 11 books. That's almost enough to have your own library, isn't it? How do you get inspiration for a new book? What's the underlying passion you have that sparks the idea for a new title?
Right. Well, my official tagline for myself as a writer and independent publisher is books to awaken, uplift, and empower.
Yeah,
so
you see that behind me.
I didn't notice that. Yeah, it's right there. Books to awaken, uplift, and empower. And so that's at the core of everything I do. I'm trying to help to awaken, uplift, and empower people. And the inspiration for the individual books, the first book was because I saw a real need, how to attract money using mind power. And I took a long time to write that book. I wanted to fill that gap of a very simple go-to book, a manual, really, a short, concise manual to tell people, to teach them how to attract money using mind power, because that was always one of my greatest needs. But then the other books have come around in just a variety of ways. The New Normal, just because I saw that need, I saw it very early on. but I had no idea what I could really write about it because all the information was already out there, number one. Number two, I didn't want to make myself a target by pointing the finger at various powers that be. That's not my job, because that can compromise my platform to share my other work that I'm trying to help people. And one morning, that idea just came to me like the new normal. Well, that's a great title for a book, and I just started writing it. And another time I came up with this title, The God Function. I thought, wow, I wonder what that is. I never heard of it. Sounds like a good title for a book. And I just put it away. And quite a long time later, one day I was sitting down and I was going to write some short piece to post online or something. And I was writing something different. And I looked and I thought, oh, this is that book, The God Function. So the inspiration, it comes out of nowhere. And sometimes I'm actually, I've been writing a book. I've been writing for 30 minutes and I think I'm writing something else. And then I realize, wait a second, this is a book. This is that book I had thought about. So it's very amazing to me still. It's very invigorating and exciting to be in that process of life and consciousness and in tune with the universe, that things can just come to and through you without you sitting down and making an outline and all of this stuff. It's just when it's ready and when it's time, books can just come to me and come through me, and that's an amazing process.
It's almost like, and I experience it my own ways in many ways, letting your mind be free, unleash it. I carry a little notebook around with me, and I have one beside the bed as well, writing those notes that suddenly come to you. And I had the idea of a course the other day that came whilst I was sitting in the doctor's surgery waiting for my appointment, writing it down my little book. Look, do you think that many leaders don't dare to dream big enough? They don't go for that big, hairy, audacious goal, but they're content to simply allow their brain to be average, producing average results, of course. Do leaders need to truly unleash that brain power and go for stretch goals? What usually holds them back from doing it?
Right. There can be a lot of things that would hold them back. Self-image issues. I have a chapter in the book on self-image where they don't just think they deserve more, or they don't see themselves as being capable of able to do more. Comfort, another one. If they think they got it pretty good and they're comfortable and they're what other people think is successful, and like, okay, well, why rock the boat? I strove to get here. Now I'm here. I like it here. So why should I try to go further and maybe risk failing? So there's a failure there. But I think that, and it's okay also. We need leaders and followers at every level of society. And when people find something that they love doing, it doesn't matter if it's being a bagger at the grocery store. When you're in your younger years and you like doing it and you like talking to people, we need baggers at the grocery store. So it's a wonderful thing. I'm all for all of it. What I'm not for is when people aspire to do and be more, a leader in business, to grow to a higher level, and they allow their own subconscious or conscious doubts and fears and feelings of wanting to play it safe to get in the way of being that. Because I believe that when we are we have feelings that we want to like desire to move in new and greater directions, that is from within us. And the mere fact that we have the desire most often is proof and indicates that we have the ability. And for people to not exercise that ability when it's really what they would like to do, that's where I see the problem with leaders in business and with heads of families and everything else. And so we need to get out a comfort zone, and that zone where we have a lack of confidence in what we actually can accomplish.
Brilliant, yes. And just before we move on, James, just to my viewers there, please note James's URL on the screen behind me there, because I'm sure that you are enjoying as much as I am this interview with James Goi Jr. James, I like to finish every interview by giving my guest 3 wishes. So if I was to give you 3 wishes on what achiever leaders should be thinking about on developing their mind power, what would those 3 wishes be?
Right. I gave that some thought, and knowing how the universe works in conjunction with our mind power and wanting achiever leaders to get the best results from their mind power, I would wish that they would think about doing these 3 things. First, giving more than they get. Second, getting themselves into a positive frame of mind before stepping out of bed in the morning. And third, giving more weight to their gut instincts or their intuition than they do to their conscious mind reasoning. Now, some hardened business people would look at these three and say, well, that's not really practical business advice, but they don't understand that the universe at large interfaces with our human minds, and it works in a certain way. And when we work with it, for instance, trying to give more than we receive, having the best interest of others at heart is the one example, then we can enlist the aid of the universe helping us in all of our endeavors. And that's why these three, although not standard business advice, I think are lacking business advice that people would do well to have.
James Goi Jr., you have set my mind buzzing. Thank you very much for a great interview.
Thank you. Thank you, Malcolm. It's been really great being with you.